Call the meeting to order at 1 o'clock. Municipal Planning Commission, agenda additions and approval. Anything from you, Jacinta?
No additions.
Okay. Mr. Stolberg?
I'll move the agenda be approved as presented.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? That's carried. Minutes approval. Did someone get a chance to read them, Mr. Clark?
Yep, you got your.
Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried as well. So what we'll do at this time is just do quick introductions. I'm going to start with Mr. Ernie Gender, board member.
Ernie Gender, board member, good afternoon. Paul McKay, board member.
Larry Clark, board member.
Justin Stevens, board member.
Les Stulberg, board member.
James Nyberg, chair for MPC.
Craig Teal, director, Parkland Community Planning Services.
Jared Kushner, manager of IT.
Jacinta Donovan, Director of Planning Services.
Rich Fitzgerald, development officer.
In the back.
James Marshall, representative for Earl Marshall Truck. Marshall,
PCPS.
Phil Jarman, resident, Ben.
And here.
Thank you, Dorsens and Communications.
There you go. Welcome, everybody. So no business arising from the minutes. Reports, 5.1, development officer. Jacinta, it's yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have our list of the meetings and activities that we were taking part in for the month of April to date. And we have processed 28 development permits to date at this time last year. And then this year we're at 37. So we're the opposite factor. We had 37 last year, and this year we have 30. So we're just basically about the same as last year. And subdivisions, we had 6, and we have 7 this year that we're processing. So we're basically on par as to what we were working with last year. And we've been mostly doing a lot of the docking and mooring authorizations for the TFA that the residents need to submit to Alberta Environment Parks in order to obtain their approval to put in a dock in the provincial right of way. So we have been working with quite a few residents to have those done. And I think that sums up the report. If there's any questions on what was in the report.
How many docking applications have you got so far?
We have about 25,
Okay.
which is, and they've been trickling in, so it hasn't been just abundance at one time. It's been kind of spread out over the past 3 weeks, so it's been okay.
Excellent. I imagine once it gets a little warmer, that'll pick up. Any questions for the development report? Okay.
I'll give you the motion to accept the development officer's report.
Thank you very much. Questions? All those in favor? Mr. Grover, I see you. Welcome on the phone. And the CEO Cassidy as well. Okay, going on to development permits. Who's taking this one? 6.1.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'll start us off with just a couple of brief remarks.
Okay. Page 11 for everyone.
Apologize for the lack of page numbers. So Annika's going to take about 15, 20 minutes or so, Mr. Chairman, to take us through the report before opening up to questions. Both Annika and I are available to help field any questions. And just for a reminder, procedure you don't have to do, you don't use it very often, but as a group, you do have the privilege of going in camera if you wish to deliberate on any development permit. Just to point that out, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. The floor is yours, Annika.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the proposed development is for a gravel pit operation located approximately 10.3 kilometers northwest of the village of Big Valley on the lands described as the southwest 33, 36, 20 west of the 4th meridian. The proposed development area is 45.5 hectares within that quarter section. The applicant is Earl Marshall Trucking Limited, with the gravel pit itself being known as the Crawford Pit. The application is for the uses defined under the land use bylaw as sand, gravel, and surface mineral extraction, as well as sand, gravel, and surface mineral processing, which has to do with the sale of aggregate on the property as well. The gravel pit is not a new development. on this property, as the site has been used for gravel extraction since the 1950s. The development permit application is merely for the continued use of the development of the property as a gravel pit operation. The surrounding uses include a residence directly to the west, and west of that residence is a small gravel pit as well. Then we have 2 gravel pits that are located to the east and agricultural uses to the north and south of that parcel. The development area is accessed through an approach of Range Road 20-4, which abuts the property to the west. And the Fen Road is located just north of the development area, so about 850 meters to the north. The gravel pit operation proposed within this application proposes uses that include extraction, processing, crushing, and stockpiling and hauling of aggregate. And if we can flip to Appendix B, which is on page 39.
Of our package.
Yes. On page 39, it shows the disturbance area of the pit, which is currently 41.8 hectares. The development proposes 2 main phases, phase 1 being the dry excavation and phase 2 being the excavation below the water table. It is estimated that there are about 6 to 7.5 meters of aggregate above the water table, which may take another 10 years to extract before operations would proceed below the water table into phase 2. There are 3 million cubic meters of aggregate estimated to be within the soil profile, and an additional 120,000 cubic meter currently stockpiled on the site. In consideration of the volume and nearby uses, there are a number of studies and reports that were requested as part of the complete application, and I will just briefly highlight some of those sections, and the more detailed parts are located within your agenda package. So with the residence being approximately 40 meters west of the development area, air quality and noise are concerns. The noise study provided stated that the adjacent residence will experience the highest noise levels, but noted that levels are still within the permissible sound levels of 60 decibels. It also indicated mitigation measures to reduce noise, and these included the use of noise attenuation enclosures, sheltering equipment through pit walls and stockpiles, and aiming directional noise equipment away from the residence. The air quality report provided evidence that the particulate matter suspended in the air exceeded the threshold against which they were compared to by more than 50% for locations outside the development area, and those would be locations that are just northwest of that area. Additional modeling of maximum concentration showed that levels at the residence could also exceed the threshold. The report stated that these higher concentrations could be reduced by 75% if the moisture content of the internal gravel roads within the pit were doubled through watering. One of the concerns that administration has with both the air quality and the noise report is that they focus on crushing taking place in the center portion of the pit. As equipment is relocated for processing, the offsite noise and air quality impacts may affect the residents differently if it moves closer towards that residence. As such, administration recommends that these activities shall only take place at least 350 meters east of the western boundary to be in line with what both the reports had stated. And that brings me to my next topic, which is traffic and roads impact. So a technical memo was submitted as part of the application, which, if we flip to page 45, page 45 shows the haul route map. The development area is located along Range Road 20-4, which is the 850 meters south of the Fen Road. Range Road 20-4 is a gravel road with a 7.5 meter top. The memo looked at 2 potential haul routes. Both haul routes lead north on Range Road 20-4 towards Fen Road. And at that point, one of the routes heads east towards Highway 56, and the other heads west towards Highway 835. The memo identified no major safety concerns with either haul routes, as both provide good sightlines, acceptable turning radii, and traffic control signage. However, the memo was based on 6 trips per day, which was a concern for us. There are large discrepancies between the number of trips indicated in various reports that were submitted as part of the application. So we were looking at anywhere between 6 trips to 200 trips per day, depending on what report you were looking at. Although we understand that market demands will impact the number of trips per day, it is crucial for the municipal infrastructure to be able to support the traffic being generated from the site. 6 trips per day on a regular basis appears unreasonable considering the volume of aggregate in the soil profile and the amount that is still stockpiled on the site. As such, administration finds that 40 to 80 trips is a more reasonable daily average with the occasional spike. To accommodate the traffic being created and provide safe infrastructure, administration recommends that Range Road 20-4 be upgraded to a 10-meter wide paved surface. Additionally, an engineering assessment shall be provided for the intersection at Fen Road as well as the approach to the gravel pit that may result in additional upgrades, such as moving the pit gate further to the east to allow for additional queuing space if needed. Road use agreements will also still be required to address traffic volumes and allow for dust abatement and adjusted hauling times. In terms of the reclamation, administration requested a phased reclamation plan as part of the application, which we did receive. However, after an assessment of the phases and the operational plan, administration recommends the use of the already approved phasing plan that was submitted to AAP. A phased reclamation plan, the one that was submitted, had 7 phases, and it appears impractical and not feasible considering the nature of the operational plan, which only had 2 phases of above the water table and below the water table. The AP approved reclamation plan allows for the entire development area to be reclaimed after extraction is completed. Administration considered the visibility of the gravel pit in relation to its ground disturbance and equipment, which are really the more concerning aspects of the gravel pit, and not so much the visibility of the tips of the stockpiles. Upon further site inspection, and as shown in photos 5 through 9, administration finds that there are no significant ground disturbances visible for the traveling public along the Fen Road to the north, besides the stockpile tips, and only limited visibility for travelers along Range Road 20-4. And as such, the recommendation recommends the approval of that AP-approved reclamation plan. However, administration also recommends that the berm that was placed along Range Road 20-4, that is adjacent to the existing residence but part of the development area, be enlarged to reduce their view of the gravel pit. And that is mainly where those ground disturbances are more prominent. The construction and maintenance of the berm will greatly reduce the visibility of the equipment and other ground disturbances, and will also reduce the noise and dust impacts to the residents. In terms of the permit duration, administration recommends that the permit be approved for a 10-year period. A 10-year permit is consistent with the county's most recent gravel pit approvals of last year. The recommended approval contains a number of conditions, which I will go through shortly, that address offsite impacts and concerns that were received through the circulation process. Allowing 10 years provides certainty for the applicants and allows them to take advantage of their investments, such as the required road upgrades. It also allows administration to reevaluate the development if another application is submitted after the 10 years. And I'm now going to move into the recommended conditions.
What page are you going to? Back to.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Right, so there's 27 conditions of approval, and I will kind of go through all of them quickly. So condition 1 lays out the development area and its required buffers and setbacks, and includes the construction and maintenance of the berm along Range Road 20-2. Condition 2 allows for the 10-year permit. Number 3 lays out the conditions that have to be completed prior to issuance of the permit. So those have to be met before the permit is being issued. Number 4 and 5 are signage requirements. Number 6 is one of the prior to issuance condition and requires full compliance with the community aggregate payment levy bylaw, which includes the payment of all levies as of January 1st, 2020. Condition 7 requires that the development area boundaries be surveyed and clearly marked by highly visible posts. It also requires a letter from a surveyor confirming the location of the posts, and that is to make sure that if staff were to have a look at the property, to just be easily identify where the development area boundaries would be. For number 8, condition 8 was included because there were concerns from staff that a wetland on the site was previously disturbed and not compensated for. As such, the condition requires additional information regarding the wetland and confirmation from AEP, if necessary, that the appropriate approvals or compensation were provided. Condition 9 requires a development agreement for the range road upgrades as well as the engineering assessment to be done and the intersection upgrades to be done as well. And it also allows until October 31st, 2023 to obtain a construction completion certificate from the county for the road construction. So they have over a year to complete the road upgrades. Condition 10 provides the permitted operating hours. 11 is the requirement in regards to Historical Resource Act approval. And it requires that the conditions of that approval be met within 18 months of issuance of the development permit. Condition 12 ensures the continued reporting and payment of the community aggregate levy bylaw, where it sounds similar as condition 8, but condition 8 focuses on the outstanding payments and compliance, whereas this one is for the continuance of the compliance. Condition 13 requires annual reports and pit plans to be submitted to the county by September 30th of each year. Condition 14 states that if the AAP registration of the gravel pit lapses or is canceled, all activity shall cease and the county must be informed. Condition 15 and 16 provide for general offsite impacts control, such as watering. 17 limits the crushing activities to occur at least 350 meters away from the western boundary, which is in line with the noise and the air quality studies and their results. Condition 18 implements some of the noise mitigation measures that were recommended in the noise report. Condition 19 and 20 require haul route agreements to be in place. Condition 21 through 24 lists standard signage, fencing, and gate requirements. 25 requires the site to be kept tidy. Number 26 stipulates reclamation to take place in accordance with that AAP approved reclamation plan. And then condition 27 requires that the reclamation has to commence no later than 12 months after extraction activity ceases or is no longer permitted, and it requires it to be completed within 24 months. And then, just to be confusing, there are 2 minor changes that we would like to add to the conditions. It would be for condition 9. So that would,
Back up if you could, Chair.
To condition 9.
if we go to condition 9, there is that clause there's a paragraph about the October 30th date or 31st date, sorry, and that should actually be its own condition and not part of condition 9. Okay. So it should be condition 10 and part of the next heading, conditions of continuing nature. Okay. So that just needs to be moved, and then everything.
So that whole paragraph from all municipal improvements required?
Yeah, exactly. So that should be a number 10 and moved under the next heading because it's a condition of continuing nature.
Okay, so that's just an editing situation. We can deal with that, absolutely.
And then similar for condition 12, there's just some wording that we would like to add. And it basically just says area shall be reported to and paid to the county. So we would just like to add and all applicable levies paid to in that first line. So just the addition of the 3 words to make it more clear.
All applicable levies to the subject property?
I'll read it out, Mr. Chairman. So it would read, all shipments of aggregates from the development area shall be reported to, and all applicable levies paid to the county in accordance with the county's aggregate payment levy model.
Okay. Okay.
So the olive will let these goes after the word and.
And that concludes my presentation.
That was a big presentation. I got a couple of questions before we start. The applicant is the agent for this permit, correct?
The applicant is Earl Marshall Trucking, and then
The agent is,
the agent is James and Crystal Marshall.
Okay, and so in this case, all the proper paperwork is filled out. I don't want to stop this going forward if we don't have all of the i's and t's crossed that we need. So the agent had a recent permit approved. Are they meeting all the conditions? Maybe through to administration, is that the output?
So,
One of us is gonna go first.
yeah, because I haven't,
Pick who, I don't care.
right,
Certainly. So I believe the question's related to a previous approval.
Right, yeah.
And I can provide some of it in terms of the physical items that we can see from a planning perspective when we go back and see what's happening on the ground in relationship to that permit approval that was given back in August of 2021. And then I do have to ask the CAO on the administrative side. So I would say that yes, they have satisfied the conditions of that August 2021 approval. So that includes things such as the area is clean and tidy, and the intrusions over the property line in terms of the undisturbed buffer have been addressed. No further excavation has gone towards the house. All the signage for safety and security purposes is up. There is a secure gate in place. There were no operations on the day that we were there, so we can't speak to what's happening on that perspective. But for all intent and purposes, just a quick a visit to the site, it does look like it's in compliance with those aspects of the development permit.
Awesome. And through to administration, is there any outstanding that you know of? Either Jacinta or Yvette?
I am not aware of any, but
The cap levy reporting, I checked on it this morning, it's falling behind, and the audit information requested has not been provided.
Okay. Gentlemen, Mr. Stevens.
Just so I'm clear, one of your recommendations was regarding a berm. If you don't mind going to page 46. So is that berm location primarily where it says phase 1? Is that what you're anticipating?
Yes, that is correct. So it would be on phase 1 of the drawing that's up right now, and it is basically just along that strip of road that is adjacent to the residence.
Okay. Good. Fair enough.
And I believe there are photos as well. I think it's photo 8 shows the berm as it is right now, portions of it, 7 and 8.
Mr. Clark.
Just on these conditions, 1A, that buffer area must be, set to the minimum of 3 meters. We've had issues in this pit.
So is that going to be surveyed? Is that the idea behind that it's surveyed to 3 meters and back? Just so there's no discrepancies going forward, how does that work? How do we don't just put up a fence and say this is good enough? Is there an official position from you guys?
So for this one, we did include the condition about the posts, and those would be surveyed.
Okay.
And the posts would be along the development area boundaries, so you could measure the 3 meters inwards from those posts.
Okay, and that would be survey cost to the developer.
That's right.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Clark?
I've got a couple other.
Okay.
Also in 1E that we talked about the berm, this is back to administration. It needs to be addressed by the looks of the berm, and also vegetation control on that berm and the rest of the pit is very important with wormwood and or absent. It could be called one of 2 different things, so that needs to be taken control. Item number 2, permit length request 10 years. With issues on this site, would recommend a maximum of 3 years with the terms and conditions reviewed fully at that time. And it's certainty for applicants, but it's also certainty for us as a development authority. Go forward.
We definitely have had issues on this site, absolutely. So is that something that's doable from where we can go with as a condition of 3 years?
I
I
would,
know the answer is yes, but I know where your guys is coming with the 10-year recommendation, but development is too site specific. So I think this has been an issue for us, this particular site. I mean, it has been a big issue for us, so.
I'm trying to remember the wording of the land use bylaw, and it may have to help me out on that. I think the starting point is it could go up to a 5, that it can't go lower than a 5. And then you're also able to go over a 5 at the discretion of the development.
So from the board standpoint, 3, 5, or 10, Mr. Gender?
I'd start out with 3.
Okay, Mr. McKay?
A 3, yeah.
Okay.
You know, my recommendation.
Clark, Mr. Stephen?
For the first one, I'd be with the 3, and then as success, we could look at a longer term.
Okay, Mr. Silver?
Yeah, I think 3 might be appropriate to make sure everything's smoothly running, and then pop her up longer if there's no problems.
Spirit, can you unmute Mr. Grover? Maybe? David, if you can hear us, we're asking the question, permit time. Unmute yourself. I love Zoom, just love it.
It's only been 2 years.
You say like that's a good thing. Okay, well, we have consensus as it is on that, but Mr. Grover can tell us later. Oh, there
3
you go.
years
3 years. Thank you, Mr. Grover.
or less. Thank
Okay.
you.
So we have that. Mr. Stolberg, and then I'll come back.
Okay, I just want to make sure on condition 6, if you could scroll to 6, please, make sure this is clear. For the aggregate payments, that that there is a proper audit conducted and that all outstanding levies are paid. I think we want to make it clear. I think this just says reporting in here. But I think we need to include all the pieces just to make sure everyone knows what's happening or what's required, so that that we have the reporting, we have an audit of the report, and that they all standing levies be paid.
And compliance. All outstanding attached to this piece of property, correct?
Yes.
That's, I think, what I was getting at earlier, that it's attached to the piece of property. Is this the place to put it?
It is, Mr. Chairman. So as Annika indicated, this topic comes up in 2 different locations. So this one is about, we need to settle on anything that's owed on that levy, and whatever process that the bylaw allows will be applied. So we want the reporting, want the correct accounting for the amounts. We want to know, there's some things that it could have been used for that mean you don't have to pay a levy, so we need to account for that too. We need to apply the correct amount. Since the permit does relate to this property, then yes, by definition, it does relate to this property.
So would we be advised to put levies and taxes if there's outstanding taxes?
The taxes is very, very much a questionable one.
Okay.
In terms of under the subdivision process, it's very clear we can do that. The development permit, I'm not sure you're getting to a legitimate planning.
Okay,
rationale.
fair enough.
Just the other part of the levies where it comes up again is going forward, the expectation is continue to keep up to date with the payment of the levies under the community aggregate levy method.
Okay. Did that answer your question, Mr. Stover?
Yeah, I think get audited reporting
With
and
that addition, right?
all the outstanding levies.
Any objection from anybody there? Shaking of heads. Mr. Clark, you had another one?
Yeah, on condition 9, restructured road is a must, and to be paved to mitigate dust and weight issues. We've had issues with weight issues in the past, or with that condition of that road. So if the road was restructured, that will settle out in the dust. Item 10, hours of operations.
If I could, so you wanted to
It just
submit it to the county and to the county's, executed to the county's satisfaction. So basic, up to a standard.
Yeah, up to that standard, but also if we are till October in another year,
Yeah.
that road has to be maintained in that meantime to what our county standards.
Fair enough. Yeah.
The hours of operation, item 10, must be strictly adhered to. That's 7 to 7, 6 days a week, excluding Sundays and statutory holidays.
Okay.
And the dust control within the pit, item number, condition 16. We've got it written there, but that's gonna be very much up to the applicant to ensure that that is kept up if we've got dust coming off that site. Watering or whatever has to be done.
And staying within that boundary of keeping it to the middle of the pit.
To the middle of the pit.
Yeah.
Condition 19, the road use agreement. If we had paved road going in, that would take us away from a road use agreement for that area and onto the Fen Road, but anywhere trucking within the county of Stellar, any aggregate coming from that pit has to fall within our road use agreements as listed, but it, just to take away the question, is road use agreements required? Yes, if you're hauling off any of our non-approved haul roads.
Fair enough. Yeah. And that's where it goes, it ties to the pit.
Yeah. And then one question I had was security deposit for reclamation. Is it been investigated and make sure that it is up to whatever Alberta Environment is asking?
So what, maybe through to administration on that one, or are you, Craig, or who?
Well, they did receive the Alberta Environment and Parks approval, which did require the payment of the securities. And as part of that, they do have to come back and pay whatever else is due within 5 years of the new report being brought to AP.
So that's part of the conditions, huh?
So say that again, within 5 years, they have to pay it up.
AP requires them to come back every 5 years and basically pay whatever additional securities are needed at that time.
So in this particular application, is there more money owing or not?
Just to be clear, so that second part Annick is describing, it's more like a truing up process.
Okay,
So you have to give the securities or you don't get your certificate.
right.
So in terms of the 265-ish, if it wasn't in place, you wouldn't have got your certificate. The other part is giving that reclamation cost to escalate over the years. They have a tendency to roll them over. That's where the 5-year clause or the 5-year updates come in. It started at 265, but if the reclamation cost went up 10%, you're expected with AEP to make up the difference before you get your next approval. So that's the truing up thing.
Was this last trued up?
It's relatively recent, so we're within the first 5 years.
Okay, good enough then. Yeah, there we are. Okay.
My only other item was, it was brought up earlier, but the taxes and levies assigned to the property, which Craig talked about, but I would.
Just the levies, yeah.
Yeah, just levies.
Okay. Mr. Strubler?
I would just like to go back to condition 12 again, because it was linked, I think, similarly to condition 6, and that's, you have made basically a clarifying amendment in there, I think, that you read out to us, right, on 12. But I just want to make sure that it's clear that that they have to be paid, but paid within the designated timeframe of the county's payment program. Like, if that would be understood, that they
Mr. Chairman,
payments is what I'm trying to get at. Yeah.
I think, I would hope that when we say in accordance with the community aggregate payment levy bylaw, which in itself actually
Get
states
that? Okay. Well, I just want everybody to make sure they know what's expected. Okay.
Okay. And is that, you're good?
I'm good.
Now, so this particular subject property is, we've had some issues with now. To bring it into compliance, is there, like, I don't think we want anything going on unless it is to bring it into compliance. So we don't want this to be an operational entity until all the conditions are met. But on the same token, we need to somehow make sure that we are allowing them to bring it into compliance. So should there be a condition that, to bring this into compliance must be coordinated with the county staff on a timely basis? Is that something that, because there is a stop work order on this subject property right now. So how does that work with this particular application?
So a couple thoughts, Mr. Chair, on that. First up, we do have the split between the conditions that you need to do before you get your official permit. But usually, and actually that's probably another edit we have to probably come back and look at as I talk about this. The timeframe Rob pulled on earlier, that starts, or is intended to start, the day after MPC makes their decision. It's not it takes 5 years to satisfy all the conditions, then start and have 3 years of operation. So if MPC makes a decision today and it goes to 3 years, that 3-year clock is ticking. In addition, any decision that council or MPC approves, any development permit, the commencement moving on has to go within the first 12 months. You can get an extension on that to about 24 months to actually get commenced underway. But there is a life to it. You don't get forever to get underway and start coming into compliance. The big compliance issue, I think, for this particular pit, regardless, I know there's been some issues in the past, is the fact that there isn't an approved development permit in place. That's the big thing that we're trying to address today, and to make sure that we set out the conditions for their ongoing operation of the use and development. Regardless of what happened in the past, they're expected to comply with everything that's on this list, or enforcement proceedings occur. So I think in some ways, in the context of the 3-year term and even getting underway for this coming season, there's a lot of work in those pre-condition approval or before a permit's actually issued. And you can see the wording very specifically in some cases says you're not allowed to start any hauling or excavation until, or sorry, that's not true. That a lot of the preconditions are you'd have the permit, then you can get into the hauling operations. Other conditions we purposely worded, such as the actual construction of the road, you don't have to have that fully constructed before the operations can go. So that's why we split up that timing, had to move it in the order of conditions so that they have to get the development agreement before you get the permit, the contract to build it. Then you could maybe be building in stages. So we've tried to account for that in terms of timing as well. So is the pressure on? I think the answer is yes. And hopefully it'll be the applicant will move on in a quick fashion. I do also want to point out that applicants can also choose, once they get an approval, to not act on it if they change their mind. So that too is another scenario outside of the county's control. But if they want to go ahead, we're laying out the conditions and expectations.
And great explanation, but I'm not 100% answering my question.
Sure, if I missed
So
part,
I'm just wondering with the stop work order, and typically we don't see something like this. This is a different one for us for sure. But what we've seen in the past on some of our stop work orders where we've opened the gate and had free access to it, operations, I'm thinking north part of the county, have continued on and we've had nothing but grief. So to protect the county's interest in this, I'm looking at how do we coordinate to allow them access to work on it, but yet keep control to make sure that we look after our interests.
I would see that right now is that the stop order itself remains in place until prior to permit issuance conditions have been satisfied. Once that permit goes out, that was the core reason as to why the stop order was issued. Okay. So now it's timely to say on the date that the county is prepared to release the official permit because all the preconditions are met. It's time to also look at taking down the stop order.
Okay, so this will go into play when all the conditions are met, excluding maybe the one that is the 12-month extension one. But anything else has to be coordinated with the county's forces to allow access. Okay, fair enough. Okay, Mr. Marshall, do you have something you'd like to say?
Yeah, I would, thank you, Chair. Thank you, I just wanted to clarify a few items that a lot over the man here, just so you got the full gist of what's going on. Maybe it's just wording that was presented to them, in all honesty. The excavation is not to be intersected into the water table. Maybe it's worded poorly. It's not to go into the water. There's no application approvals for that, just so council's aware and clear of this. It's dropping the elevation of the pit. It's not entering the water at any given point for this development as of today, right?
If you look at Appendix B, Phase 2 is actually lower elevations out of water table, so not in the water table.
Yeah, it's just wording, just so you guys are aware of what.
I think that's an Alberta application.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I went through all of these items and some of the approvals I agree with 100% as far as the development approval. One of them here, this 30-meter undisturbed from the wetlands. I believe we do have, from what I understand of it, approval from AEP. Right now there's an existing 15-meter setback from an existing creek on the south side of the subject property. They approved it, they authorized it. So I don't know, it kind of makes it tough to put things back at 30 meters when it's already there and been approved. If you follow what I mean, it's hard to make things go back, especially when in conditions you can't be any closer than 30 meters, we'd be in contravention of it to meet a requirement. It's just so the wording's a little tricky, if you know what I'm getting at.
Okay, just if I could,
I think, Mr. Chairman, we're talking about item 1C, where we said it's an undisturbed buffer, but what I hear the applicant saying is already partially disturbed.
so no more continued on that?
Would be mostly clear.
So does that make sense? No more continued operation on that till that goes on? Yeah.
Also, there's been indication that staff has seen that there's been a wetlands to the northwest of the subject in the development area. AEP approved it. They did a wetland assessment at a given time. They approved it. I mean, I have no problem with getting this information to council or to administration and stuff. I've personally spoke with the landowner, and he's told me that since he's owned the land, his parents, there's been nothing there, and in fact, it's no water on the said lands. That's why that they put a well in there, was to facilitate the means to get water for their cattle and stuff. This is information I got from the landowner.
And if I could then, Mr. Teal, is there, and we got a map, don't we, Jared? We have a physical map?
We'll help you show this facility.
Okay.
Back to historical air photos that staff noted from previous application materials in what looked like a potential wetland northwest portion, and it's now covered in the more tan colored disturbance area. And that's what gave rise to the question of condition.
Okay.
Sorry, may I?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I don't know what page it is because of the numbering. It's on your PDF, but I don't know here. Where are we? Sorry. So condition 2, sorry, I apologize. Condition 2, it says extraction and hauling activities for 10 years from the date of approval. And then I've heard your discussions regarding reducing it to a 3-year. It's a pretty tough scenario. The rules are in place essentially at any given time. You can issue the stop order, you can deal with any contravention of a development permit. So all this information was extracted. And I know from a previous application of mine, it's quite tiresome and costly and stuff. So I don't feel that in myself, in my opinion, that it's fair to say 3 years when, as Craig has indicated, some of this stuff's going to take some time. So in essence, clock's ticking. So in another, let's say it's 2 years that the pit operates, we got to have a road paved, all these conditions met. It's a lot of upfront costs out the window, essentially. And then in that time, as it's worded here right now, this is based on the 10 years. It says the reclamation activities are required to permit continue to be approved and enforced beyond May 2032. It says that the wording, I don't know if it's this one, one of these wordings is that there will be no other permit issued after the 10 years. I think it's just the wording is not, I'm sure you can get a permit, but the way that it's worded is that essentially you can't apply for another permit after that given time.
I don't read that, I guess. I don't, in any time, that application can be put in and the permit, if all conditions are met, those permits should be absolutely no issues.
Mr. Chairman, I got a slightly different answer on that one. At any point in time, an applicant can walk in and get a new development permit, which would override the previous permit. Basically push it out of its way, and then the terms and conditions of that permit would carry on. So that's what, so in this particular wording, we'd have to be prepared for two scenarios, the scenario of how long that actual extraction activity happens. But we want our condition for the reclamation requirement to live past that point. So we can't just wipe out the entire permit at the end of year 3, 5, or 10, or whichever you choose, because we need that reclamation piece to still be hanging or staying on as an obligation.
Okay. So at any point you could come in, even in a 10-year period, you could come in for a new application, right? So,
No, sorry, just the way I interpreted it myself, so.
I just also want to, the reason Craig and Annika had recommended the 10 years prior is because of all the studies. And I think that aspect has been forgotten about. The cost of the studies, and I know it's been said it's the cost of doing business, but the cost of the studies to do these studies is over $30,000 every time you have to do the studies. So if you're saying in 3 years, you have to redo all the studies, that's a significant cost. And I believe that's why Craig had suggested a 10-year expiry date.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess this would be a question to our administration. So it went on a shorter term of 3 years, would the MPC board, could they choose to say that not all those studies would have to be repeated in 3, just certain ones? Or would you, does every study have to be done again in 3?
Those conditions could be lifted if we decided at that point.
I believe the studies would still be required, but you may accept the study that was done for this application last year in 3 years' time.
If I remember, it's at the discretion of the county.
Yeah, no, that would be helpful.
Anything else?
The boundaries of the number 7 here, condition. I'll just summarize it quick. 6x6 posts in the subject areas as per the map. I think it's A to L or M, I think, or something, to identify the boundaries. I'm trying to understand, there's 2 things with it. Just the number 1 thing is the consistency with other pit operations. I understand that there was an applicant in here that operated a pit, encroached into a wetlands quite significantly, and this wasn't a requirement of it. So I just was letting council know maybe they've overlooked it. I'm just wondering why the special circumstances in this. And secondly, in that, a 6x6 post is pretty specific. And in essence, when we're told to put a 6x6 post at these marks, but yet we're told not to excavate or do anything to put them in place, excavation is disturbing of the soil, et cetera, digging a hole. I mean, it's setting us up for failure. I mean, on my property where I've got an approval for, I done things like you pound in a post, it's 5 feet above ground, same as this is stipulating, right? And you make it highly visible. It's just a more reasonable approach, right? It's just you hammer the post in, the land surveyor can do it, it's done. You know, this is pretty specific, like it's a 6x6 square post, like it's.
And if I am, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're just trying to delineate this away from being a fence post. We've had some issues in the past and we're hopefully learning from our mistakes, and going forward, you may see that on more applications, because there has been, well, no, that was a marker post, no, it was a fence post. So by using a 6x6 post, we are delineating it. It is a marker post. It is not a fence post. Most people don't put a 6x6 post in the ground and use it unless you've got bulls or buffaloes. For the most part, it's the reason.
With that,
And the excavation, putting in a post is still putting a post. We're not considering that excavation. It's part of your permit, so you're allowed to do that.
Condition number 9, there's an undertaking and an engineer assessment on the Fenn Road at 204 at the intersection of the access to the site. That's number 8. I'm a little confused by this because maybe I'm wrong here. When the Fenn Road was paved, would they not have done this portion of it, like ensure that the intersection was proper and stuff? That's on number A. Number B, providing detailed designs and improvements is required by engineer assessment. The bylaw was worded so that administration council and everybody was aware as to what the road status is like. Can it do the job? Can it not? Right. Number C here says that there should be a road made 10 meters wide and paved is the recommendation. I don't know where this 10-meter wide paved surface come from. Resource road specifications is actually a 9-meter top paved or unpaved. I don't know why we would have to build a road to a non-seasonal band structure when the Fenn Road, which is your main resource road, which the county applied money for to get, is a 9-meter top. It's under road restrictions and bans. Secondly, in regards to that, in the last year or 2 years, as an operator pulling from that pit, I implemented to my staff a maximum 30 kilometers an hour speed limit. Okay. To me, a more fair approach for this would be dust control. You know, whether it be calcium or oil or whatever's acceptable to the county, and reduce those speeds. This pit was open, and this is what gets back to Craig's comment. This pit was opened, well, the first major haul that I'm aware of come out of there in 1952. It was an Alberta transportation job. It was around 65,000 some cubic meters, 10 cents a yard. Smoking deal today. Back then, that was the going rate. It hasn't had, that I'm aware of, any structural major components done to that road, and it's survived and is a very hard standing road as per the study. The study has been presented that the study was only good for 6 trips. We hired this firm to be independent as per your bylaw. They did the study. They asked us, what is the requirements of the county of Stettler? We said 6 trips per day, above that a road use agreement. So that's what they based their study on. So that's what it was based on. In my application that I acted on behalf as an agent for Road Marshal Trucking, I made note that it would be 8 trucks up to 100 loads a day. Now I picked worst case scenario, to be fair. Other developers won't do that. They'll fudge the numbers and make it look pretty, and later on, look out. I was very honest and forthright regarding it, and even exceeded any job that's come under there 100 trips a day. Okay, so then administration has looked at this data based on the number of volume that's currently in the pit and feel it's unreasonable that it be 6 trips a day. As an average, I could agree with that, but an average over a full year, yeah, it's probably is 6 trips per day, right? But when they pick a number based on the volume that's there, it's not a correct representation of what's going on. And the reason I say that is you guys would be also familiar with your pit operations. I'll give you one example, would be the Stormont pit. Or sorry, the Crawford pit storm pit, I'm sorry, which the county went down and Fenn anyway. They did a massive crush there years ago. I want to say 5, 6, 7, 8, long time ago. So the number isn't based on the volume because they're still pulling from that pile. You know what I mean? This isn't a number that's in 1 year it leaves. Boy, I wish it'd be pretty awesome. You know, the number's based on an average, and I do stress the word average. They're saying the average truck hauls per day is 60 to 80 trucks a day. I wish. Boy, I dream of them days. That'd be nice. 60 to 80 loads a day on a paved road. She'd be wicked. It really would. It's not a justifiable number to go by. It really isn't. Any of the big projects we've done, whether it's paving, et cetera, have not been above 100 trips a day. Like when I put it in the application, 100 trips per day, I classified, maybe it's different in the wording too. 100 trips to me is I'm making a trip to Stettler. That's 1 trip. I make 100 trips to Stettler. That's 100 trips, not 100. And 100 is 200 trips. I identify it as 1 trip. But that's the biggest one that I see here is essentially this infrastructure improvements above and beyond what you guys even require. I think a more fair, reasonable approach, like I say, existing development. I understand there's issues with the dust, is the understanding. Mitigate it out to a full-time calcium or something that's more cost reasonable. Something else I'd also like to add to this is my concern, acting as the agent for this, is this pit has a lifespan of a few years, right? We all could agree with that. There's also a pit right across the road that has current codes of practice in place. So it's a registered pit. Same deal, right? The thresholds are met, it's that size. So as a developer, we're going to be asked by this council to fork out, I'll just pick the number, let's say just about $1 million, 800,000, $1 million for a 3-year permit on something that could be as a discretionary use tossed out the window and somebody else reaps the rewards. It doesn't seem fair as a developer at all. I think the approach needs to be essentially a joint cost venture at minimum. I mean, I understand the dust, but I mean, if the end result is council's wanting this paved, I don't know why the one developer should have to pay for it when there's a active codes of pit practice right across the road. I just wanted to make it clear so council's aware of this. I've checked the numbers on it. It's an active codes of practice.
So we go by what we get for information, for sure. So that's what we've taken. And Craig, you can ask why, or answer why we would have a 10-year or a 10-meter top versus the 9-meter top.
Ask Annika to help us with the correct design standard, which you did get from the operations department.
Okay.
So that is, the selection is made by the people who look after the roads for the county.
It is
is feverishly looking for the information inside her
Doing that.
expanded file. Just a sec, we'll let her answer.
I'm going to go to the tail end of James's question, I think, on the, if there is someone else that benefits from infrastructure that's built by one developer, it's not atypical in the development agreement to do what's called an endeavor to assist approach. And what that means is if I build something for my development, someone else comes forward later on and they take out a development for a gravel pit or even a housing development, and they benefit from that paved road, there can be a recovery in their development agreement on behalf of the developer that initially paid for the paved road. So that's certainly what I would expect to happen if there's a possibility in the course of this development here to be addressed to take care of that aspect. I'm not sure if I bought enough time for her to find the drawing.
You did. There she is. Just, I'm gonna go to Annika and then I'll go to you, Mr. Steven.
Okay, so the standard we took is from page 94 of the council policy manual. And it is the typical cross-section, rural, industrial, commercial, subdivision, collector, and local roads. And that is the standard that we receive from the operations department in terms of what they want to see for the amount of traffic that this pit will generate.
Yeah, okay, there you go. So that is the policy that's set out. So I'm gonna go to Mr. Stevens and then, go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
Well, Annika did answer the one question about the 9 versus 10 meter. I had some questions about why we require more than the road that they would be turning directly onto. But in my short time on council and previous applications said that we require dust control. And in my brief time on council, the number of complaints at every pit, not anyone specifically, about dust control to the municipality's satisfaction, that has been nonstop. This is one of the things that I've learned a lot about. And for that reason, I am in favor of more clearly defining what dust control should be for everyone across the board. And I think it's moving that direction because this seems to be a no-win for us. And this is every pit, every in the entire county, we have a number of people that are upset about all of them.
Every oil field facility that we're hauling into, we're getting bombarded by this. Go ahead, Mr. Marshall.
I actually tried to, Crystal actually tried to obtain the information from the county here a couple of days ago and was unsuccessful regarding, well, you did get it. Okay, sorry, so I haven't seen it. So all I could go by at the given time was a report that was done by the county. It's their 2014, the rural study update. Table 3-2, it makes note of a resource road. Okay, and the resource road, like this, they listed as a collector. Anyway, it says that a resource road meets one of the 3 or 4 criteria, and the one that it meets is essentially serves one or more specific resource-based industries. I'd agree with that. This gravel pit there, right? The next criteria in it is that it exceeds 100 trips per day. And then the criteria for the road is a 9-meter width top. I actually got pricing and stuff regarding preparing a 10-meter top from a contractor and stuff, and they told me that it's typically a 9. That's why I don't follow where the 10 comes from, like when the standard from information I'm getting to. And this was a report that was, like I say, the county got it. It was provided by Stantec Engineering at the time. That's where I just don't know where that 10 comes from. Sorry, I just don't see where it's at.
And just so I was looking at, Annika actually sent it to me, the functional collection and local roads within rural industry or commercial. And on that page 94 that she identified where she got that information from, it actually says subgrade preparation, or it says finished road top 10 meters for a collector road and 8 to 9 meters for a local road. I've talked to multiple people who have bid, actually the Fen Road is a 9-meter road, not a 10-meter road.
So I'm not 100% sure, but I would think that the pavement is probably 9 meters, but the road itself is 10. That could be. Mr. Stevens, go ahead.
Yeah, I like clarification from the administration. What is the width of Fen Road? And if you don't have it offhand, I understand, but I can understand why we would match the spec of the Fen Road.
Can I also say that Fen Road gets banned seasonal every year as well, but yet they want that 900-meter section of the road so that no seasonal bans will affect it.
So that may be the reason that we went that direction. So, I'm in favor of making it, the same as the Fen Road. I have no problem. It will be a banned road, but, we can definitely have no problem with that, because you're not going anywhere anyways. After you get there, you're gonna have to be banned when you get out onto that road anyways. So just a quick, straw poll is, how's everybody else feel with that 9-meter top?
If that's what the Fen Road is.
If that's, so we could we make that, the same as the Fen Road? Go ahead.
Well, I'm not, sorry, I wish operations was here, but I know there was concern about, based on their study, their transportation study, on the number of trucks. And we kind of went in the middle where, maybe the report needs to be updated or maybe revised. And then if we had a better picture of what the actual volume was, the recommendations could be different. But there is concern about, gravel trucks passing, going back and forth. The Fen Road would not be banned if it wasn't for the road bans on 56. But because it's 90% on 56, to get to Fen, you're kind of going to get stuck because you can't go anywhere if it remains unbanned.
So to solve this problem, I think what we can do is go that route, that it is, whatever happens with the Fen Road, because you don't have any choice. You're not going to drive up and down that road, the 800 meters just back and forth. It doesn't make any sense. Go ahead, Mr. Gender.
The concern that I have is when they call about a structure of the road, are they talking about okay, if it's gonna be, say, like just a finished gravel road, it could be maybe a 10-meter on there, but by the time you add your substructure on there, subgrade and then your pavement with a 3-to-1, that could be narrowing it up onto, say, like the 9 meters that we may have on the Fen Road. I would like to be able to see a little bit more information on the structure, the base structure of the Fen Road compared to what we are asking for versus, say, like also the finished product of the pavement on it. That would be no narrower than what the Fen Road has been. The subgrade be accordingly built to.
So, Mr. Gender, what I would propose is that we make the standard of this 800 meters to be equivalent or better than the Fen Road. Does that work for you, Annika? Okay, so I'm going to go to Mr. Stevens.
I was going to say the same thing. And I also like the comment that was made about future developments that we would endeavor to assist when future developments come in. I would like to see that change added as well.
Okay. And Mr. McKay, you're okay with that? Mr. Clark, Mr. Stolberg? Okay. And Mr. Grover, you're okay with that?
Yep, good with it.
Good. Go ahead.
Just to bring some more clarity to it, administration's made note that 835 is 56 is at a 90% ban, so you can't go nowhere. I'd like to point out to council that 835 is non-ban road north and south, south to 590, north to Erskine. So in all honesty, I'm not too sure why, if it's built to a non-ban structure, why isn't it not banned?
That's enough. That's not for this development permit. So let's move on. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. And this is going by the same information I got from the 2014 rural study to address Mr. Gender's question and concern. A resource road is a 9-meter width top. It makes identification of it 4-to-1 normal side slope.
James, I'm just gonna stop you there. We've already discussed this. We're moving on to the next point that you have. This is where we're moving on. It's a done issue where you've got a consensus of where we're at on it.
All right, just give me 1 second to get my notes here. I apologize for that. use of extraction of, number 10. The operations from 7 to 7, Monday to Saturday. No operations on stat holidays, etc. It makes it extremely difficult as the applicant here when other pits in the region don't have these binding timeframes. It also makes it very tough when you're in construction projects. I mean, the Alberta government has a pit down next to us, and they don't shut down the Sundays. Like if it's a paving job and it needs to be done, the weather's good to go. That's a tough one to me.
And we've addressed that. I think we addressed that on the previous permit, and I think this is going to be the new standard going forward. And so as these new applications come in, you will see that happen. And I think we dealt with it if you had an opportunity to make special application if it was crappy weather all week and you said that it was something that you needed to haul, there may be exceptions made. So I think we dealt with that already. Yeah, go ahead.
And then if I can make note of that, that was regarding a different application. This one that I'm being an acting agent on makes no reference to that. There's nothing in there. It's hardlining it that it's 7 to 7 from what I'm reading, with no exceptions. Like,
Do you remember how we worded that last time?
We talked about it.
It was because it was through the road use agreement is how we tied it in, was it not?
Probably did, but short of pulling up the actual term,
Okay.
I'm happy. Yeah, give me a second.
There you go. I knew you would. Mr. Clark, go ahead.
Just on them, that's gonna be more of the exception than the rule.
Yeah.
And as we go through these other permits that have been put out, if it becomes a standard to work Sundays, we'll have to readdress it again. But if it's happens just every once in a while, that would be a different scenario.
Okay, Mr. Gender.
We can see, say, like some parts of it, okay, if I'm gonna be the next door neighbor, listening to it, if you're gonna be rock crushing, say like 7 days a week, the main days, I believe that some of us want to live out in the countryside to be able to have a little bit of peace and quiet. If it relates to, say, like just the hauling of the gravel, I believe it's a much quieter. So I would like to be able to say, okay, if there's gonna be coming to, say, like a Saturday, I would just soon say that if it's gonna be on the crushing end, to not allow that.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we did use slightly different wording last time, but I think the general gist is going to be the same. So it's actually less wording. The use of the development area for extraction processing of gravel or sand shall be limited to Monday through Saturday, except for any statutory holiday between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m.
That's what we've got here.
Pretty much just different. It's
Did we take hauling out? Is that what we did? No, what did we do? Because the hauling was attached to,
the thing.
we took the hauling out, I think is what we did. And the hauling was done through the road use agreement.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we can do that in this one as well. The hauling can be brought out, so you could still haul, you just can't crush 7 days a week.
In fairness, you probably have to take the loading component out of there too. So
Hauling and loading. Okay, fair enough. Does that work for everybody? No hauling and loading, or hauling and loading will be dictated to by the road use agreement. The crushing and everything else will be dealt with. And that's what we did on the other
When
road.
it's paved, there won't be a road use agreement on.
Mike?
That's 7 days a week.
So when if I was an adjacent landowner, if I wanted to say like I have a peace and quiet, say like on the way one day, say like on a Saturday, it would be approachable to say, okay, this day I've got family members, whatever, coming for a visit, can we have that exercise to be able to say, okay, we would like to be able to have some peace and quiet.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Mr. Stevens, then I'm gonna go with Mr. Clark.
It makes some sense to me to allow the hauling on Sundays and not the crushing, as Councillor Gender has indicated. And the reason being, that's a lot more manageable to plan for. Like, the current application says there's 121,000 cubic meter stockpile. I mean, you're not gonna haul that on a Sunday. If we allow the hauling, but not the crushing, it kind of splits the difference. It does give the neighbors that noise benefit, but it's also allows some planning for the developer.
Okay, Mr. Clark?
As I say, the exception in the rule, if we're 6 days a week, and if it was a paving job or something like that, that to me is a separate issue to address.
Okay, so
Standard everyday hauling.
we went with a 10.1 or 10.A, I think that's how you mark it, 10.A. Hauling and loading may be applied for outside these hours under special circumstances. Do we have a mechanism even for that event?
A little bit more wordsmithing than that.
I think it's hooked to the road use agreements, but I'd have to check.
Go on and we'll think about that one.
And this is more of an administration thing, keeping track of everything, keeping everything straight in life. Annual reports in the pit plan shall be submitted to the development officer on the 30th of each year indicating the following information. And it's the standard thing. I mean, I know what it's about. It's not a big concern. It's just going to create confusion, I think, with your staff, because previous dealings was that they wanted it on December, but they didn't say that. And now this is saying September. It doesn't coincide with the permit. You know what I mean? It would probably be easier for everybody involved if it coincided with the permit, but that's just food for thought. That's what I see with it.
Your thoughts?
Certainly. So I think the general intent was to get everyone kind of reporting on the same timeframe from a financial perspective. But I think the harsh reality is that we don't hold up approval of development permits so that we meet our timing, report timings match. So there's always going to be kind of a staggered start in any given year. Some of the issues with the previous dates where we're asking people to take a picture of what they've stockpiled over the course of the summer, waiting for that to be December where it's potentially snow covered, maybe a little bit counterproductive. So that's why we went with more of a kind of almost a lead. Well, leads are still on, but snow hasn't fallen yet type deadline. And it would fit with the counties need to have some sort of idea for that particular fiscal year.
Okay. Okay, works for me. Noted.
Number 17, notwithstanding, so no crushing shall take place 350 meters from the setback requirements. The noise, the recommendations here are to point equipment away, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to make council aware, the decibel rating didn't exceed any of the maximum allowable tolerances as per the study. And actually that was in essence in a worst case scenario. The crusher was crushing during them studies while they're taking it. It wasn't a modeling. Like modeling can be modeling, but real-time stuff is real-time stuff. That was with crusher crushing at capacity. The gen set noise pointed in a westerly fashion. So the only noise barrier was the pit face and the berm. So by positioning it, it will be quieter, yeah. The noise study was somewhere in the 40 to some decibels. Just for point of reference, decibel rating, I want to say a refrigerator running is like 50 to 55. So to move the crusher based on that noise frame seems really overstepped, like as far as like above and beyond. Like, I mean, the county makes note of, I shall produce no disturbances beyond reasonable expectation by the county council or county, right? It just seems like it's setting the bar pretty high to be quieter than you're quieter than a refrigerator, but yet quieter yet.
When was that study done?
And as per the applicants,
I believe it was in 2020
2020, I believe.
when the crusher was running.
When the crusher was working, was it actually done in that pit or was it done in a different?
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was actual data from that pit.
And I think that's a portion of what we're dealing with there. I mean, the dust is the other mitigation factors. So.
And that's what I'm glad you brought it up, Mr. Nyberg. I was actually wanting to address that. That study that was conducted for the air quality was a modeling. And the modeling is kind of worded in here through presentation to council that it's really not a worst case scenario when in fact it is. It was based on dry conditions. If the whole report was read in its entirety, it indicates that. And in essence, it doesn't identify the dust mitigation things that can be done. We reached out to the same firm that conducted the study, independent study. regarding the thresholds and stuff. We brought it with us. I mean, we can't present it. It's pretty tough, but we have it. They broke out the trucking from the crushing, and the major source of the dust was the trucking. It was mitigated out to that. And it made note that in essence, with proper misting, et cetera, of the equipment at transfer points and drop points at the end of conveyors, even as far as the dust that's acquired through the jaw or the cone, that it can reduce the emissions by 75 to 90%. As a developer, acting as a developer here, I think a more fair approach to keep this good for everything is, in essence, instead of using a modeling, I would recommend, and you guys could amend this, in essence, is to actually conduct the study with real-time data, put these mitigated measures in place, and see where the numbers are actually at versus just a modeling based on worst-case scenario, because that isn't a true representation of the possibility of what can be done. It's no different than noise, right? The problem's noise, you mitigate the problem. You don't just move the problem, you mitigate the problem, and it can be dealt with right where it is, right?
Well, and I think that's where the benefit of having the 3-year permit comes in play, where you'll be able to prove that to the MPC that that's something that can be done. So, and you actually do the study, and then when you come back, you will have that in your hands, and we can look at it, and if we're here, and go from there.
Just a comment on that is if anybody's been outside in Alberta over the last couple of weeks, the wind blows different directions, multiple times per day.
Wait around 5 minutes. Like
Your actuals could very much reflect you're either blowing towards other gravel pits or blowing towards residents or blowing, so.
Yeah.
That's part of your modeling is to look at what it could be if regardless of where the wind is, wherever it's blowing it
to. Number 21, sorry, if I can make it. No hauling shall occur on Range Road 204 south of the development area approach. I would hope that this isn't a hard line thing, you know what I mean? Kind of, that's the way it's worded. So I just wanted to clarify on that. So it'd be kind of like when the bans were in place put around the anodyne plant at the time, or I believe it was, it may have been New Altus, it's changed names, not secure. That the local residents can't get anything in there. Same scenario. I might not be here, you guys might not be here. Different landowners may change. You've made it so that this development can't supply something that's going down there. That's all.
And I think that with a road use agreement, and I think going forward, I think that could happen, but I think that would have to be in a separate situation at that point in time. Yeah.
Just to clarify though, that Mr. Nyberg, so then a road use agreement will supersede or override a condition of a development permit?
In this case, go ahead.
Is it, through the administration, is it possible to just alter that wording slightly? No hauling shall occur on Range Road 20-4 south of the development area approach without a prior approved road use plan? I mean, then.
Well, and the problem we're having is the one-offs where we see these trucks going down there for 1 or 2 loads, and it's causing us grief. 1 or 2 loads every day seems to be our grief. So.
Well, and the way it worded, and correct me if I'm wrong, if this is enforceable, we're not leaving it at it has to be greater than 6. We're saying it isn't. You are not allowed to haul south unless you have a road use agreement. We're not saying it has to reach that 6 threshold. So at that point, all right, we have one job. You can apply for a road use agreement. It needs to go south. Dust control, you can take your 3 loads south. I guess
I see it. That's the way that I see it.
I guess it doesn't close the door entirely, but you can apply. We can give you an exception. But that road use agreement gives them the English.
So what trumps a road use agreement? Yeah, the strict wording of development permit condition would rule the day. So if you want to open it up to the way Councillor Stevens has been suggesting, we do have to modify that text. And it could be as simple as adding, unless a road use agreement is in place. to the end of the commission order number 21. And in all likelihood, during the construction of the north portion, there's going to be a need for an alternative for operations or area.
Administration, where are we at on that?
I think if you, worded somewhat like the way Justin is, where no trucks leave, they go south on 20-4 unless there's a road use in place, very enforceable at that time.
So it's enforceable. Everybody's good with that? Okay. Mr. Grover?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? We're at 21, so we got to be getting close to the end.
There's a bunch of stuff I wanted to address here before MPC. The other thing I just wanted to re-stress is in essence, the paving requirement of this. I think it can be done much better. Well, it can't be done much better. What's better than pave? Who wouldn't want pave right to their house? But I think my opinion is essentially that the wording is in here essentially as the developer does this. And that's what you guys decide is it's a hard line on the pave. Because there is other remedies. I mean, it isn't a water truck. It can't be calcium. Is it essentially that it's the cost is, it's like when you build a subdivision, you're the first guy there and you got to pay up all the upfront costs for the pave, and at some point you get it back. And that it's not worded in here. I think it's something that you guys should maybe look at and all this.
I think Mr. Teal addressed that already, so.
And that formally ends what I had to bring up in regards to my concerns, just to get you guys up to speed a little more on the situation and what's going on here. So.
Okay, appreciate it. Well done. Any questions, concerns, or comments that would like to be made by the board? I've got Mr. Gender.
Page 24. I think it just said, talks about the berm, the topsoil berm that's being built up. It does not really say like on how it addresses, say like the width, the height, that sort of thing. But I find that this is one that should be manicured so that we can properly, very possibly approach it so that it can be sprayed. Other than that, it could be just walking on it. So like that is one that it is up to the operator to be able to find out what it means, but for his ease of it, I would just say like to be able to suggest that one in there. On page 28, there's it says about phase number 3 that it should not be, it's not permitted, but on the map it is showing that it is already operational. On page 31. I guess we've already addressed that one, or the hours. I guess I go back to page 27, where it's saying like Mr. Clark had brought up the idea, say like with the dust suppressant, like within the pit. On page 27, it does state that there's 120 meters, say like from the approach back to the scale, that should be used as a dust control, not a dust suppressant. I believe that's a well covered.
I just want to clarify, Ernie, I think you're getting the reclamation map and the operational map confused, because the operational map, which is Appendix B, is phase 3, and it's not showing any excavation yet.
That's correct. It's the same idea with that 15 meters.
The reclamation map has phase 3, which is the reclamation portion of it that shows that that's Appendix H.
My confusion. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? I need a motion then. Mr. Stolberg?
I'll move that the development permit be approved with conditions as amended today.
Mr. Grover? Fall asleep on us? Oh, he left. Okay. So Mr. Gender, yes?
Okay, being that we were looking at some different recommendations or an adjustment to them, are we going to wait until the,
No, we already made those. We made those as we went forward.
okay.
So all those conditions have been duly noted by staff, and we're going forward with that. Okay? Mr. Grover's not here, so we're gonna go ahead without him, unfortunately. All those in favor? It's carried. And Mr. Marshall, just so you know that this is a site that is still under a stop work order. If you need to coordinate to have the conditions met, you will have to reach out to staff on a timely manner to get access to that site. So, okay, and is that clear? Be at 2 o'clock and ask us to show up and do something. So.
If I may to clarify.
I'm gonna get it unmuted.
Are you in favor, Mr. Grover?
Okay.
Are you in favor? Mr. Grover, are you there? He's having a little technical difficulties. Don't want you to miss out. You're still muted.
I'm unmuted now.
All right, there you go. Are you in favor of the motion?
If it follows all the concerns in development, yep.
Okay, there you go. We have a full, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Just to clarify that then, James, so if I reach out to staff in a timely manner, like when we work on a Saturday, because as Craig mentions, the time's ticking, the clock's ticking, we can, like Sundays, there's a Sunday a no-go to implement posts.
Part of your condition is not working on Sunday.
Okay. No, that's why I was asking, because you mentioned about special circumstances.
Staff has the opportunity to do that. Typically, they don't work on Saturdays, but if there's an opportunity for something to go forward, you would have to coordinate with staff to make that happen. If they're not able to make that, it is a Monday to Friday, unfortunately. So, okay? Okay. Okay. Moving on. Craig and Annika? Okay, are you here for the whole day? Okay, because we do have an in-camera and we could go to that and you guys could leave if you'd like.
Chair, we do have,
So
we have one other applicant on the line.
Oh, sorry.
I think it'll
But
be
not with these guys. That is
a
straight.
fairly quick one, if you don't.
Okay, there you go. Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Your people. Okay, Jacinta, is this you or Rich?
Rich.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in 2017, a development permit was issued for Lot 18, Block 2, Plan 0620307, for an ancillary building and a variance for it to be located in the front yard. The structure was completed and the lot has had a permit for an RV to be used as dwelling unit since then to be the principal use. The applicant is now proposing to construct a detached dwelling, 1,484 square feet, with an 8-foot, 10-inch setback to both side yards instead of the required 10-foot setback, and is therefore requesting a variance to accommodate the distance. The detached dwelling is permitted use in the Resort Residential Community Service District, but because of the setbacks on the side, he's applying for a variance.
So page 61 of our package. Everybody can catch up. Okay. Any questions or concerns? Yes?
I will, I'll make the motion that we approve this as staff recommends. But with one caveat, I would like staff to stress that with this variance, this is something I've brought up before, that that variance is measured from the foundation, but to ensure that any overhangs or closer points of the building do remain on their property, if that could be stressed.
And am I saying it right, Dawu?
Yes.
Mr. Dawu, you can unmute there. So Mr. Stevens has just made a comment on that the overhang doesn't exceed into your neighbor's property. I'm sure you are well aware of that and you will make sure that happens.
It will, there are only 2-foot eaves as on the plan, so they'll definitely be far from the property line.
Awesome. Okay. Not to be anticlimactic, but seeing no other questions or concerns, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. We'll build a garage.
It's been approved.
There you go. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for your time, guys.
All right. Do you want to go into camera?
I'm just wondering if you wanted to join the in-camera session.
She is here. Okay, can I get a motion to go into camera? Mr.
I'll make you that motion.
Oh, okay, I'm gonna take Mr. Grover's.
Now I'm unmuted, I'll be a chatty Cathy.
All those in favor?
Favor.
There you go, thank you. Not that we don't want you to stay around, but you're more than welcome to stay.
Not that I don't want to stick around, I'm out of here too.
Safe travels, you have to stay in.
I have a meeting.
Oh,
So it's waiting.
Wasn't there staff on their lobby having meetings? All right, we're back. And we are at 6.2. Everybody's ready on page 49 of our package. And Jacinta or Rich, who's taking this away?
I am, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this application is to apply for the construction of a 1,200 square foot ancillary building in the front yard of a parcel of land in Trestle Estates. So our land use bylaw, section 4312, states that on a multi-lot subdivision, a detached building or any other portion thereof shall not be placed within the front yard of a parcel. Section 23.5 does allow the Municipal Planning Commission the discretion to allow the variance to locate the ancillary building in the front yard. And section 23.3 and 23.4 allows a minimum or development standard in this bylaw. So the size of the building is 1,200 square feet, which is a permitted use. There isn't any variation on that required. So 23.11 stipulates the development authority may decide on development permit application that does not comply with the bylaw if it, in the opinion of the Municipal Planning Commission, the development would not unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere with or affect the use, enjoyment, or value of neighboring parcels of land, and the proposed development conforms to the use prescribed in the bylaw. So we are recommending approval, subject to the conditions listed under 3.1.
Mr. Gender.
Staff recommendations, please.
Okay, we'll, there's, so you have a number of them. Staff to approve this, right? 3.1 to approve with a condition set out, because the staff has made a few recommendations there. Okay, any questions and concerns? Seeing none? All those in favor, Mr. Grover?
Opposed?
Okay,
Aren't they supposed to be in the back?
they are. Look at the picture.
I'm opposed.
Oh, like, kind of on the side yard, I guess, right?
Yes, it is on this, well, it's
Where is Trestle Estates at?
right by Jewel Estates, just
Mile east.
northeast of town, just near Jewel Estates.
Okay, so we have that approved with one opposed being Mr. Grover. Okay,
Got it.
okay, moving on to 6.3.
My apologies, my system just froze up, so I had to go back in and.
You're taking this?
Sorry about that. My system, I had to reboot it and get it going here. So this application is for a contractor's business, home-based, and it's for used car sales. So on the southwest of 3819. So the applicant is looking to obtain his AMPIC license. He purchases vehicles at the auction and does the repairs and resells them. So there's no specific use to that in our land use bylaw, but under the contractor's business home base, it does allow various uses related to servicing.
Does he already have a contractor's business out there?
He does this type of operation, but in order to get the AMVIC license, he has to have a development permit or a business license. So,
Any questions or concerns, Mr. Gender? I'll move it, please. Okay,
I have a question for administration. So if he's already been doing this sort of thing previously, has there been any complaints made as far as aesthetics, any nuisance type
in
stuff?
his yard, it's pretty nice. Everything's at the very back.
Okay.
I think
we
it's
haven't
like
had
developed
any
anything
complaints.
about it.
It's on our resource road, so it's paved, so it's not.
Oh, yes, always landscaping, yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
it's actually a perfect place for it.
Use mechanic in the oil patch, went for shit, so he's gotta carry on.
Yeah, he's, yeah. Okay. No questions, concerns? All those in favor? Mr. Grover?
Favor.
There we go. That's carried unanimously. Next up, Ducks Unlimited Canada. What do we got?
So we just have received this notification from Ducks Unlimited regarding the registration of a conservation easement on the section 2337 west of the 4th, consisting of 355.6 acres. The conservation easement will be registered on the subject parcels of land with 60 days following the April 21st notification letter pursuant to the Environmental Protection and Enhancement Act. Generally, what is requested is that we waive that 60-day waive that period where they have to allow that 60 days. However, with the backlog in land titles, they aren't requesting it because I just heard today that it's 3 months now to have any registrations. So they feel that it's not necessary to consider the waiving of the 60-day period. It just says, it's just notification.
Received for information.
I'll give the motion to receive this for information.
This is down in your area.
Well, it's not in my area, it's my right there.
Okay.
In Larry's area.
Just off the, it's actually, yeah.
Okay, any issues, concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor for receipt for information? That is carried. And Dave, unanimous?
Yep. I guess.
Any other questions, concerns that administration has? We're good? Just the next meeting? May the 25th? We're good? Mr. Clark gives us the motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Favor.